Hi, welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. I am outside the Korean Pavilion here at World Expo 2015. I'm taking side for what is one of the most reflexive and I think interesting pavilions here at World Expo 2015 in Milan. So let's go take a look. Okay, as we begin the tour, as I'd like to show you, this is the exterior of the building. And the South Korean pavilion, I have to say, was one of the most impressive ones, and probably is the reason why the lines were so long. It was a challenge, certainly, seeing some of the bigger pavilions at the Expo, just because you had to wait so long and there are only so many hours in the day. This is showing you, actually we're looking through the Brazil pavilion, it's showing you that unique moon jar construction, which I thought was one of the most innovative, iconic uses of architecture at the pavilion, or at the exposition, in terms of the pavilions. And then here, this is the queue area. You could see some artistic assemblages trying to get us to think about our consumption. These next few slides I thought absolutely remarkable in terms of just some of the cool things they did with typography and text. And you'll see this in the video as well in the interior of the exhibit. But I thought this was just marvelous. And then as you walk in, they play off of these stereotypical, evolutionary diagrams. And the next one, as you can see, going down here, we go from eating an apple to a donut to being rather obese and so forth. And here again is that text that I mentioned on the interior. Just a really, really cool design. I mean, it's one of the best ones, I think, in terms of this focus on aesthetics. Now, I'll be showing you this very interesting robot screen display, which I think for me was one of the highlights of this pavilion. But now I'm showing you some of the video that I shot walking in. Again, you see the evolutionary, interesting open closet there. I didn't notice that when I was going through. Again, getting us to address very early on in this first room our own complicity in terms of diet, our own complicity in terms of the effects on the planet, sustainability, and all the issues that are being addressed in so many pavilions. In particular, if you get a chance, watch the video on Pavilion Zero, which really also brings home this issue. And the issue, I guess you could say, is one of personal responsibility. And I think, it's very true that the Korean Pavilion was one of the most self-focused or reflexive of the pavilions at the Expo. It wasn't giving us a travel log. There's very little in the Korean Pavilion that shows you, particular landscapes or tourist sort of destinations. It's abstract, it's conceptual, it's aesthetic, all the while it's technological and immersive and powerful. But I think this emphasis on the self, this emphasis on personal responsibility, is what was so impressive to me about walking through this pavilion. We're also seeing here on the left some of the emphases on aesthetic constructs in the pavilion. And we'll continue to walk through and just take a look at some of the interesting exhibits that are given to the guest here. We're walking into the fermentation theme, and way at the back you'll see that giant jar which focuses also on fermentation. Okay, and actually, before I show you that video, I wanted to delve into the Korean Pavilion's website. Pretty impressive. As you can see here, they have information about the pavilion itself and also about Korean food. And they have social media, Facebook, Instagram integration as well. So it's another example of how the World Expo today is much more than it used to be in terms of the social media and the web availability. Describing the themes here of the pavilion. And this is describing the design of the moon jar and how it was so important in terms of the symbolism that was given to the pavilion. And then right here also on the website you see they have a map, which I really like how they did this. They're basically guiding the visitor through very specific themes, this one being the symphony of food and balance, the next one being what our bodies tell us, talking about food crises and what we can do in terms of addressing these. Science of time, fermentation. So the value that fermentation presents for food practices and culinary traditions. And then this is at the end, the wisdom of the earth, which is storage. So again, I think this is a really neat way to allow the guests to get more information about the pavilion through social media. Now let me show you this video that I was talking about earlier. Okay, and right at this point I wanted to just cut back the sound, and it's hard for me to leave the pavilion and not ask a critical question. And I guess the critical question in this case is, are we in awe with the technology here? Are we in awe with the storytelling? Or both? And as I look at this, I am thoroughly amazed, but at the same time I'm asking myself a question. Am I amazed at the resolution, which in person is so much more spectacular than you can see here? Am I amazed with the resolution on these screens? Am I amazed with the robots that are moving in sync with them? And it's always a question I ask and I think about from that perspective of Disney Imagineering, where you should have the technology augmenting the story, the narrative, what you're trying to tell to the guest. It shouldn't become the only story in this space. So it's something that I wanted to leave as a question here as I look at the marvelous South Korean Pavilion at World Expo 2015. And so the continuation here is on this theme of storage and how do we feed the world. And certainly one of the issues that comes up when you think about hunger, starvation, and lack of food and water for so many people, millions of people around the world, is the fact that many foods are perishable, and you have to think about technologies of being able to store food and preserve food for longer periods of time. Now here is where you're seeing some of the delights of Korean cuisine. And I thought this video installation was really evocative, and I thought one of the most beautiful ones that I noted at the Expo. So let's just take a look at some of this video. Okay, and as we begin to leave this last room, we'll enter into the small gift shop area and restaurant, and you also see a number of objects of material culture and some other interesting foundations that are part of the pavilion. Hope you enjoyed this video feature today here at the Korea Pavilion World Expo 2015 Milan. Please come back for additional video features of the Immersive Worlds Handbook.